guys are ready for discussion? I'm ready for discussion. Let's bring on all the presenters that are here.
Obviously, we're pumped. We're just getting
we're
just
talking.
rolling right into it. I love it. I love it.
Let's talk.
Yeah, we can't help it.
I've been listening all day.
We have the beautiful Stephanie Mo Davis,
All right. What's
John
up,
Rowland,
John,
Logan
my man?
Hart,
What's up,
and
Logan?
Corey. Which
Corey.
I'm glad Corey
What's
is
up,
here.
Corey?
Welcome, Corey. Corey's going to be a presenter tomorrow on day 2.
Yeah.
And we got a full house. Excellent.
Right
Nice. Yeah.
So I'd love to get some input from your guys' perspective on how day 1 of the FUNL 3 conference was.
Wonderful.
What's up, everyone?
Blown away.
I definitely loved it. I've been sitting here just chilling all day long, all day, just taking it in, enjoying the payoff of, the hard work that I put into my presentation and just enjoying everyone else's hard work as well. It's been such a fulfilling experience for me.
Nice. You had a great presentation, Logan. So well thought out and articulated. I can't wait. I want to see the rest of it. And
Thank you.
You're a warrior.
Thank you. That's premiering tomorrow. I've already set up the premiere on YouTube, so the full 4-hour version will be dropping around lunchtime tomorrow.
Nice.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah, all you guys did a great job on the presentation, so thank you so much for your contribution.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some of the comments together. Chris, if you want to
I had
take it away. You had a question?
A quick message from Crypt Rick. He wasn't able to be here with us right now. He'll be around tomorrow. He'll be popping in, but I'm going to be on Rick's show on Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific. Crypt Rick's is I've Been Thinking, and you can look him up at revolution.radio. And we're going to kind of talk about this conference some more on Monday, and go over some of the things we learned and took away from this. So that'd be something folks can tune into. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about today's conference. What one thing Leslie and I have noticed over and over is like we brought all these speakers together under the Trivium, right? But everybody's passionate about what they chose to talk about. And yet these themes keep coming up and these commonalities. I'm curious to see if any of you have noticed some of these commonalities and things popping up throughout the day. Why don't we start off with Stephanie?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you all for having me. It was a real pleasure and privilege to be with you all. And although it was my first year and I'm a little bit new to this group of people participating, the through line, like you said, Chris, is very evident. It seems as though we all have these specific takes on things, but collectively what's happening in the moment seems exceptionally important. And I think that's why we're having this repetitive, although different nature amongst all of us, because some of these topics we're talking about are so relevant in this moment, so deeply important. And I think to have a multitude of perspectives and saying it in slightly different ways just hits it home even more for people's ears who hear things differently. I have to say that I have my 17-year-old niece here visiting for the weekend, and she watched almost the entire conference. And some of this material, as simplified as we're explaining it, is complex concepts or things that people aren't used to hearing. And my 17-year-old niece was really getting it and really interesting and really commenting on everyone's presentations and how articulate and clear it was. So I feel as though as a group, as an aggregate group, if we can take these concepts that people aren't used to hearing every day and articulate it so a 17-year-old can understand it and be interested in it, we're doing something right. So thanks, guys. It was really awesome to be here, and I'm definitely seeing that theme. And I think we need to keep discussing it because it's coming at us hard from many different angles. These topics of gender and these important concepts of getting back to nature and the organic principles and natural law, we need to keep hitting it home because people are starting to listen and wake up. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you. You had a great presentation.
Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I was seeing the theme of trauma, the importance of healing our trauma and how the causes of trauma is a big theme through this. And, my presentation tomorrow will follow through on that as well and continue this integration. That is very much, what our our job is today, is to do the inner work, to clear ourselves of trauma, to understand our imbalances, to discover how we've been, hijacked and mind controlled, and take back our sovereignty and our ability to trust ourselves as we walk through the world, following, moral principles.
Leslie, you said something earlier. I forget exactly who was speaking about it, but talking about the essence of not being connected and having access to the morphogenetic field because of trauma. And actually, in a lot of the active imagination work that I do, when I go deep into my subconscious, I see it exactly as that. I see my mind and the blockages of the trauma as my inaccess. I can't get access to the information, to the organic field, if that trauma is blocking. And I can see it. When you release something, you have a big purge, it becomes clear, and me connecting to the field just opens up. So I think that's spot on.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you see that as well. I have a question for you. I'd like to just ask it now, maybe because it's on my mind. But Stephanie, you had gone through a couple of topics and you settled on this particular one. And I wondered if you might explain. You made a comment that you felt like the topic you spoke on was really being called for. And I wondered if you might speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, I made an entirely different presentation called Higher Ground, which was discussing how we can get trapped in the first three chakras. So the roots, the sacral, and the ego, the third. And I thought it was very general and very important. But all of a sudden, something was just coming through to me just a couple of days ago. And it was telling me, don't do this. Hold a space for the collective feminine of this group, and really go in from that perspective and try to really lead and be a demonstration for the feminine, the women amongst this group, because there's a lot. And, obviously the gender issues and what's going on in culture right now. And I just think that there's such a misunderstanding of what it takes for women to really cultivate, to reharness that sacred femininity. It's different, it's deep, it's not analytical. As I was saying, there's something else to holding this space of holding the field and being within it, while the men are also doing this work, and we're integrating both. How I perceive it, if this makes sense, is as everybody agreed upon, we do the work within the masculine and the feminine, the right brain. We work on the integration through working on the trauma. But then as we come together collectively in groups like this, if we have the ability to then separate again, like multiply, the cells divide. So then the women can expand upon and go deeper into the essence of the sacred feminine. So the men can hold that deeper essence container for the sacred masculine. I think that what can come through us as a group, as a whole, can be even greater when we can take that harmony within, and then in the group expand through the sacred feminine and masculine. So I felt like we needed to represent, and I needed to change it to represent that feminine nature.
Thank you. Yeah, very good.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So yeah, there's definitely an inversion on all levels, right? So to invert the masculine and feminine, and we see, the males and females just divert from their true essence and their inherent qualities and characteristics. I know, Logan, you talk a lot about that. If you want to comment, and John and Corey.
Yeah, actually, even if you'll remember, I mentioned in this presentation, as I briefly touched, I literally just said, and as a part of the healing slide, healing that internal gender confusion. And then I said, I plan on going fully in depth on a whole other presentation. I've already started an outline on its stuff, because it's a topic that not only am I passionate about, I think it's very, very pertinent today, and becoming more and more relevant. And I feel that I have a really good understanding of it, and hopefully can bring that through in a way that really clicks with people, because I think people, they feel it, they understand it kind of like on a subconscious level. So when you're hearing that out loud and said in a very simple, straightforward way, I think that people will resonate and connect, because they can feel something's very, very off with just the general way that gender is being portrayed, especially in media and TV shows and politics and all of this stuff. It's just, it struck me really profound, Stephanie, when you were speaking about the the animus coming through as almost a possession, and the irony of how these very angry feminist type women ironically are displaying toxic masculinity. It's the
Right.
toxic animus that is controlling them.
Right.
And then they're projecting that and pointing the finger and calling the men the toxic masculine.
Exactly. And you see that on the other end as well, where men, the passivity is a possession of the anima. It's the image,
Yes.
it's the imago of the collective amalgamation of women, and we're projecting it onto the other, saying that they're the problem. So I think that if, like we're discussing, if we can break this stuff down as simply as possible, I think it makes sense. I think it really strikes a chord, and there's a resonance, even if they don't totally grasp it initially because of the conditioning. I think there's a resonance that rings true when you hear this material. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's ironic that there's this idea that gender roles are this oppressive thing, this icky, like, oh, you're putting these projections on me of these social or human constructs, as they're calling them. But the irony of that is, when you actually understand the inherent characteristics of masculine and feminine, and that it's the exact opposite of oppression. It's actually being who you truly are rather than that inversion of, and you're not imposing anything. You're just acknowledging that there are these inherent characteristics of each. They're not the same thing. They're very different but complementary, like you said, and they are actually who we are inherently and instinctually want to be and feel more fulfilled when we're actually internally aligned and embodying those things and not at war with ourselves.
I think the time in history that we're at is really essential, bringing this information forth, because I was having a conversation with a woman who's more so a feminist just the other day, and I asked her, what do you perceive as unhealthy, toxic femininity? And she said, women that are too passive, women that don't step up, women that aren't empowered. And I was like, this is actually like what we were thinking 20, 30, 40 years ago. Where we're at now in history is the inversion. It's the flip. And I think that's what we need to keep talking about and stressing, because I think that's where we're getting tripped up societally.
Yeah, those things she's describing are masculine traits, and that's not to say that they're wrong, because like it's a matter of understanding the difference between feminine and masculine power. See, they think that the only way to be powerful is masculine power, and they view subconsciously actual femininity, which is feminine power, as weakness, as vulnerability, when actually that is their power. It's just very different.
Yeah. And the men being passive is more so what I see as an issue within the world. This doesn't look the same as it did 40 years ago. And I think we need to get up to speed of where we're at culturally right now in this moment. Are we perceiving what's actually going on correctly in this moment, and not bringing forward the past and just reiterating and repeating things that aren't actually where we're at?
Well said, you two. Excellent. John, I want to move to you, and Leslie had an original question about synchronicities, and I saw that you mentioned a few times in the comments that you kind of picked up and observed some synchronicities with your presentation and other presenters, their information, and being a syncretist, it's important. So I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, thanks. When you pick a topic like the cosmos that's so broad, there's going to be a lot of synchronicities, right? Yeah, specifically Nate Cap's presentation, I was like, I mean, I had envisioned part of that as my presentation in terms of the symbols and how they relate to the cosmology, and so yeah, that was fun, like to see that and to know like, oh yeah, like, you know, we're on the same wavelength, but it's also a little bit different, you know, it's nuanced. And that's really like the beauty I've seen in the conference, is the nuance of ideas and the nuance of looking at these principles. And it's like seeing the Trivium process in action amongst all of us. We're all going to benefit from this sharing, whether we agree or disagree. We're going to, you know, take the good parts and distill what doesn't work, and it's going to shape our worldview, and then we're going to move from there. And you know, on this specific topic that you guys were just talking about the gender, one thing I wanted to comment, I had been thinking about this, and again, like wanted to talk about it in my presentation. I realized this is just one big presentation of life. So, but this was about the issues like the transgender thing. I kind of see an opportunity to sort of what I'm thinking of integrating the agenda is like we see the agenda and we want to react because it's so extreme. But I'm thinking, is there really something going on with gender, but on a spiritual level? You know, that we are maybe coming into this alchemical marriage and we're feeling gender neutral in different ways. We all are getting in contact with our anima, animus. And so we're understanding these concepts on a spiritual level. But what the system does is they know that's coming. They know the long calendar. They know the cycles of the cosmos. And they know that, oh, there's going to be this shift in consciousness and we need to manipulate it. So we're going to make it a physical thing. You can physically change yourself into a woman. You can physically change yourself into a man. So they invert this thing that's probably naturally occurring, and that we can look at that from our community and say, okay, well, let's teach the Hermetic principles to children and teach the positive sense of the gender roles. Because in reality, you look at, like, I used to take ECE classes and early childhood education, and they showed how in the 70s, they would give these kids books, and it was like, men are policemen, women are meter maids, men are doctors, women are nurses. So that's an imbalance too, right? It's like, no, like you don't have to teach kids that like there's these strict boundaries, you know. So getting into teaching these principles that again are, you know, they're complex, but they're pretty simple. There's something that you're supposed to wrap your mind around and let it, you know, let it marinate for years, for a lifetime, you know. So I just think that we can try to look at these agendas and realize like there's opportunities in there to teach.
Hey, John, can I say something to parlay on that real quick? I think that's pretty spot on in how I feel. And I think that one of the traps, I mean, it's kind of multipolar, but one of the traps that we get caught in is externalizing something or pulling the cart before the horse, as they say, before we fully understand and know how to apply it in a healthy way. And I feel what you're saying. And that's what I almost feel, is that we're going too quick. We're externalizing something that we're feeling or an emotion before truly understanding and integrating what could possibly be happening. And then the hijacking and the social engineers, like you said, know exactly what to do. And it's almost an outward in kind of, I don't want to say the wrong way, but the way where you have to go back and do it again because you're externalizing too quickly. You don't truly maybe understand. Whereas this work that we're discussing is this sitting with it within, doing the inner work, really starting to understand and balance the psyche. You know, everything is mental. So really understanding from within and then coming out with a bit more of proper judgment and discernment. But you're right. The social engineers know exactly what's coming. There is a mass awakening. It's just been hijacked, it feels to me. So our message, you know, is important.
It was a great nap. Woke up, went back to sleep a little bit. Cat nap. Excellent. Yeah. Good comment. Yeah, I'm well said. I don't think there's a great awakening. I would say there's definitely a great awareness. I say this a lot. A lot of people understand that something's not right, and that's the only step. That's as far as they go. Well, something's not right, you know, something needs to change. Governments, you know, a lot of people actually, I think they just did some surveys too, they don't actually trust the government, right? But yet that's as far as they go. They pitch their tent up right at the pavement and they don't actually make that climb, walking up that mountain of enlightenment. So that's the great awareness, which to me is a huge opportunity. Huge opportunity. A great awareness or a higher awareness is opportunity to learn something, to reach someone, to inspire someone to look deeper within. But until we see more people come out and go public, talk about objective morality, police and military quitting their jobs, et cetera, people, a mass exodus of the systems, the institutions, then I would say absolutely there's a great awakening happening. Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to go to Corey. How'd you feel about day one? And then maybe give the viewers a little taste about your presentation tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, everybody did fantastic work, especially everyone here. Logan, you touched on some things like in your presentation, just like going over it. And I'm like, oh, shoot, you know, some of these things, you're right, are like separate topics of their own that can be explored into detail. But like John, you also like had your slides were like massive, man, like full screen slides, like holy moly. They go into the etymology, which is perfect too, because the thing is, the way I look at it is everybody's got different perspectives on similar truths. And this is like a beauty. It's like an art ultimately. Like everybody's got like their own puzzle pieces all forming this one picture. And I hope to simply be another puzzle piece among you guys, because frankly, I think you guys all contribute to more than what I am simply as a human being myself. I think you guys fulfill essentially the family that is fulfilling the heart of freedom. And that's the way I see it. So, you know, I consider you guys brothers and sisters in this mission. And I think there's a lot of action that can be done. A lot that isn't usually talked about in independent media at all. I think a lot of the ideas that we generally share here are not even talked about in independent media for the most part. So while we might want to talk about the mainstream media, I just want to remind people the independent media nonetheless still has yet to grasp onto these ideas. That's how new they are, but they are so empowering. The fact that we see quadruple numbers, many people entering this movement, many people, new content creators I'm finding every single week, every single month, who are producing content about this because it's impacting them both personally and spiritually, and for their family members and other people they know. So there's a lot of value in it, and I think you guys are awesome. So great job for that. As for your other question that you had about my presentation tomorrow, it's called Morality as Authority. It goes into detail about the concept of morality and authority, which sounds like something maybe we've heard before, but it isn't, because I'm introducing it through the lens of a philosophy called naturosophy, which I developed as a sort of derivative of like natural law understanding and my own observations of nature, and getting a fuller worldview, not just limited to just actions or behavior done to other individuals, but also to ourselves, and looking at the worldview and anything within the world as a whole. So I try to break it down really simply within an hour to break it down, like what is good, what is evil, right? And then breaking it down even further, what is right, what is wrong, and then what about authority? Where does that play in? Because it's actually a huge concept. And so just trying to bring it all together, because I have a naturosophy presentation that's like 10 hours, but it's nice to have one that's like 1 hour. And it also sums up a lot of my books and other material in case people don't know about it. So thank you, Will. And thank you for all you've been doing for 10 hours or so. Jeez, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have David Rodriguez in the backstage chomping at the bit. He made a comment. We are the 3% awakening makers. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Will, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't see David in the back room.
Oh, you don't see him? He commented in the chat.
Yeah, he might have to accept. It's going to ask him his name, and then he can accept, and he'll go into the back room, and then I'll see him pop up. Oh,
okay.
wait, hold on. Had to scroll down. There he is.
Okay.
There you go.
There you are. David. You're hiding.
What's up?
You're
hey, man, I'm sitting in the backstage. I'm agreeing with all you guys, man. Yes, we're the brothers and sisters on the earth, man. So much respect for you guys for doing this event and, you know, inviting me and all these great content creators. Beautiful time to be alive, my friends. And this one thing I forgot to mention on my talk, you know, when you ever watch your talk, you're like, oh, I forgot to mention this, to focus on the intergenerational component. This is their game. And so we know, I used to be a statist, and it was every 4 years, and, you know, yeehaw, we got a politician's going to save us. And then eventually you step into self-ownership and your kingship and your queenship. And it's like, oh, it's a long game. And I think that's what, for me, has been part of my awakening, is for the youth and the young people, getting the kids out of the school system, teaching about these things. If somebody would have told me at age 5 or 10 about self-ownership and like Passio, I mean, you guys did a great job. Like you said, Logan and John, everybody else here, But like, don't steal. That's it. Don't steal. It's that simple. So that's where I get a lot of hope, because once it's like, oh, dude, that's it. After you do all the research, you do all the reading and learning and conferences, and you're like, don't steal. That's it, dude. We're gonna win. We're gonna win. And these videos and these presentations are gonna go on forever. One of the powerful things about the media stuff that y'all create and we're all co-creating together is this video. You can have like Logan, you do a 4-hour clip, cut it down to 1 hour, 5 minutes, or 30 seconds. And now that can go viral, whatever the platform that comes out, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Now it's like, okay, you got this clip, this gold nugget of Passio saying don't steal and breaking down the real sins. It's like, oh my gosh, dude. So as long as they don't shut down the internet or EMP or some crazy, even still, back in the days is like a pamphlet. You have a pamphlet or a USB or something like this. So even though like it was a great question of like the awakening and awareness, just like these guys speak forth their existence of you're going to have no privacy and no nothing, you're going to be happy. I'm like, we're going to have privacy. We're going to have abundance. We're going to have love and children and grandbabies and a food forest and everything big, because through our language, I start to realize I'm creating, through my words in the spiritual realm. And like you said, Stephanie, I haven't met you, but nice to meet you. But like everything's mental, right? So it's mental and then verbal and then manifestation creation. And then once we get our habits right and our intentions and emotions, like you said, there's emotion versus the action. And that's why I get a lot of hope. So I'm watching this. I'm cheering everybody. I'm like, yeah, man, let's go. So it is a long game. That was my conclusion. I want to share that part. Was like, it is intergenerational. We're like, let's change the world today. That's not how it works, man. You got to shift the boat slowly and have patience. And then I think as we focus on that intergenerational aspect of it, we're definitely going to win. It just might take time and trials and challenges and everything, but I am hopeful. But yeah, we're going to go through a storm for sure, because these predators are backed up in a corner. We know their names. We know what societies they're part of. We know everything. And now they're in deep shit. So we send them peace and love, but they shouldn't have done this in the first place. So, whatever the people do to you guys, you bad guys out there, that's what you guys earn. And that's your karma that you created for yourself. And then these creators here and people watching, we're creating good karma by putting the light out there and the love and the peace. And these are the unstoppable spiritual truths that will not be stopped.
Well said, brother. Well said. We have a few questions. People are ready to get some questions answered. So I'll post them. And then, we got a lot of people here, a powerhouse. We'll just, short answers, take a few minutes, and then we'll see how many we can knock out. Here's a good one to jump it off from Evolve Yourself. How can all this change a very sick society? Talking about the information, I'm assuming. There needs to be direct action. Government needs to step down, which won't happen.
Hey, Will, I'd like to address this one.
Sure.
Especially kind of jumping off something David was just saying, because I hear this a lot, and it's something that I'm going to address in my presentation at Wall. It's like the hesitation. I'm not going to do something if I don't know how it's going to turn out. And like, in some ways it's an understandable, logical way to go about things. Like, don't jump off a cliff without checking to make sure the water's deep enough, like, I get that. Right. But we have that to the extreme in our society with people, and they want to say, well, how are we going to stop the evil? Well, what's going to happen when we stop paying the taxes? Or I don't know, there might be a lot of violence. It's like, you know what? These things are coming from a place of principle and truth. And because of the principle, we have to do the right thing. If the outcome doesn't work out well for us in the next few years or days of our life, we still have to do the right thing. Okay, think about it in this way. If somebody was murdering a little child right in front of you, and if you're going to run over there, you're going to get into it, you might get stabbed too. Are you going to not do it? You're going to let the little child get stabbed rather than because, well, I might get stabbed. I'll just let the kid die. That's the kind of mentality that people have when we're like, well, it's too hard, let's just give up. Like, we have to do this speaking of truth and discovering of truth because of it's the right thing to do, and not because of how it's going to work out. We don't know. The future's not figured out yet. That's what we're doing right now, is creating the future by speaking our truth into the world. And the more of us that do that in a positive way, the more that's what's actually going to be out there. But it takes more people doing that, and that's why we're doing it with such enthusiasm. And I love the way David pops in there with all that energy, and he always shows up with that energy.
Yeah.
And all these people do, all these heroes I'm surrounded with here are people that are coming out with strong energy, not fearful of what might not happen or what the resistance might be. And we don't got time or, life. We don't have another life to just like be like, oh, I'll just mess around on this one, and then the next one we'll get down to business. So I'll pass it on.
I'd like to answer the question or the comment. I would say that this is direct action. This is the same action that's being taken against us. Is just a signal being put out, and we're picking it up from whatever, and now we have access to this technology and we're putting it out there. And I would say that we are the proof of an awakening. People weren't doing this, 10 years ago in this way. And so just us sitting here talking about it, putting out content, that is direct action. Because the idea that we're going to go in and like stop government and take this guy to jail, like that's a trap for more government. I want that guy held accountable. I want you to put him in a jail. Like, wait, I thought I was like an anarchist, So I don't know. It's easy to become what you hate. And I just think that, the direct action is detachment from the system, building new systems, and then, if anything, supporting political positions of choice. That's the main thing. If you want to, give your kid whatever to have them go to school, that's fine. But I want to have the choice to not do that. If you're not going to give me that choice, I'm not going to go to your institution anymore. And that's what more people need to be doing. I see these people at the state capitol still arguing. We were there 10 years ago. Nothing changes. You don't get listened to. So for me, I'd like to go in there and turn around and talk to the people and say, hey, if we pull our kids out of the system, they'll change their rules and like invite us back, right? But as long as you keep sitting here begging them, you're just confirming that we need them. So
I got something to say.
Yeah, me too. Next.
Okay. Like you said, John, what we're doing is reverse mind control. We're using that same effect. And when I hear comments like this, which are very common and, like you said, very understandable, of course, but it's a fear-based mindset, because what I think that comes down to at the crux of it is you're afraid to trust the process. Natural law, it will take care of things. You do the right action and you start at the mental level. That's where we're attacking, at the mental level, changing hearts and minds. Natural law will take care of the rest. The direct action will be a natural consequence of changing the mindset.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to mention the law of mentalism and the all is mind. Unless you have the thought, you won't take the action. So everything starts with thought. And that's what we're planting, the seeds of thought that will then grow into action. And it's a slow, deep process, because we're not trying to get superficial change based on fear and reactivity, but the deepest change based on moral principle and long-term vision.
Mm-hmm. And you can't put the cart before the horse. Mm-hmm. If you have to follow the steps of the trivium. The action comes after the mental state. So it's like if we just tore the government down, they would just build a new one, because you haven't learned the lesson mentally first. That has to come first.
Yeah. Real quick, I'll add something. If we look at the three aspects of consciousness, we have thoughts, emotions, and actions. What's the bridge between the physical material plane of effects to the causal realm or the metaphysical realm of consciousness and energy? It's the voice. That's the bridge. Mm. So that's like our first line of defense. We use the voice. We say no before we go to the last word, right? Which can have 16 clip, can have a banana clip, whatever you like. But the voice, that vibratory, the vibration that we put out there, that is very impactful. So yeah, I agree with Logan, John, what you guys said, that was spot on. This is action. And also, detachment activism. First things first, you got to do the great work, which is the internal process of getting your mind right and getting your emotional stability and your body in shape. And that's a continual process. So it's the threefold process of action. And that's what action is, right? Act, ion. To act is to perform, and ion is energy, or your ion. So it is acting in the real world. And like you said, Leslie, it always derives from mentalism.
And our voices inspire courage. There's an emotional aspect here that, the web of our voice creates signals that go to connect to other people's, which helps to inspire and give a sense of they're not alone. There are others, and that brings strength and inspiration and courage.
Like a node, right? We can become a node.
That's our group. We reached out to each other in 2020 because we needed support, right? And what did that lead to? That led to this, putting this poster on my wall was inspired from Logan on the Wizard Factory with his design he had behind his head. Nice. So every time any of us do these actions in the world, it reverberates. When you throw a rock into a lake, it doesn't matter how big the lake is, those reverberations of rings are going to go as far out as the lake goes. And that's the truth about our word that we bring into this world. And what we're experiencing now is the ripple effect of what's happened leading up to now. Yeah. So people want to see quick change. It's like, dude, we got to work through all the shit they've been piling up for the last couple hundred years. We got to work through all that. And it's going to take some time, before we start seeing the effects of us doing actions that aren't stealing. And that means we all have to start doing actions that aren't so much stealing sooner than later, and the better we're working together on that, the easier it's going to go. But is that have we addressed that question? Is there anyone else who wanted to talk on that?
Yeah, I would like to add to that, if you don't mind. So I think action obviously is a big topic, and I like to talk about direct action like this. If there's one question I have to answer, it's this. I mean, it's the whole reason why I created the Liberator 2, not to plug it, but I literally created it because I didn't see it anywhere else in independent media. The exact change that I saw would be necessary, which is direct involvement of everybody, the mass public, not limited to just the One Great Work Network or this group or that group or these ideas or that ideas, but rather every idea around self-ownership, freedom, voluntarism, statism, etc. These ideas, which most people, again, in the world, like you guys have said, most people have never even heard of. And so the idea is just to get the word out there, whether we're printing newspapers or printing articles or making videos or putting out shorts like, David and some of you guys were mentioning these different methods of communication. Let's utilize all the resources. Let's utilize all the strategies. The thing is, but there's a lot of people in the chat right now who are like, yeah, we got to do maybe what these guys are doing. We got to put out content. You might need help with that. And that's why, Mark's True Media, course can be really helpful for a lot of people. And also my project, the Liberator 2, where people can send an article, I'll turn it into a video. If you need help with video production, you can send it to me. If you have a Freedom server, Telegram, Facebook group, whatever, send it to me. I'll put it on the networking page where everybody can share their own stuff. We have an activism section, an event section. It showed this FUNL conference. It also shows the Exceed conference. Right now, there's also Pork Fest happening in New Hampshire. I could have gone to that if I didn't go to Florida. Boo-hoo, bad me. But anyways, yeah, I don't know, David, you probably, I don't know. I feel like some of us probably, there's some people in this,
I got some.
to be in this group that has had to go there or something, because man, I missed out. I had the opportunity. I'm like, oh shoot. But it's nice because I'm still here with you guys. I'm still putting out the work. So no matter what happens in my life, there's always something I can do. I can take other people's clips. I could make a clips channel. I mean, how much will that go? There's people who react to videos online, and that just gets views alone. They're not even putting out their own content. They're taking other people's content. AI, what is it designed to do? Is take people's content and turn it into something else. Everybody's now plagiarizing and copywriting. But the point is that you can make an impact, and you can observe how other people are doing it. Some content creators are massive and they don't really do much. I would say they're not putting hours and hours of effort into the information that we're presenting here. So I think it's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, the topic matter we deal with is much more serious and may deal with scenarios that can be challenging the mainstream, but we can be vigilant and we can bring people from YouTube onto Brighteon, into BitChute, and to these other platforms. So you can grow the alternative solutions. This is part of the action. Like David, you mentioned a bunch of resources to me when you did interviews. Like, we can set up our own schools. We don't need the public school system anymore. This is a huge action because it all starts at childhood. It starts with the public school indoctrination. So if you get rid of that, what you have is you're growing a child authentically as they are, because without the programming from the Prussian school education that is meant to teach them obedience, they get to learn what they want to learn, and they're happy and they want to explore the world, and maybe they'll be more interested in these ideas rather than throw them off and say, oh no, government's necessary, man's law, and voting, and without it. They make all these assumptions because they were programmed into that. But if we allow our child to, and this is where like the masculine and the feminine come in, where Stephanie Mo Davis talks about this, if you have like that nurturing parental support system, I mean, that is a really good teaching ethical system, I would say. So you have that combined with like some of these voluntary solutions. David, if you want to mention some of them, I think they'd be really helpful for people. So you have the Liberator, you got Mark's True Roundtable, where you can learn how to create content. You got all these people here who you can email, you can contact, who might be helping you. I also have a project I'm setting up with Stephanie and Leslie and John, like probably going to be all of you at the end of this, where it's about health. We're setting up a health project. Leslie and Stephanie, what I'm talking about, it's a huge health project. We've been working on it for like a year almost, I think, but we keep meeting up like every month. It's about statism and really delving deep into diagnosing it through a medical perspective. So there's so many different routes that you can take. And I saw somebody in the chat who's like a specialist on water. Like, that's beautiful. Like, share your perspective. Don't be afraid, and just find a way to do it. So this is something you can do. Civil disobedience. Logan, you touched on this in your presentation. Nonviolent resistance. You can look at the Quakers. You can look at Gandhi. You can look at Martin Luther King Jr. David, you sent me a clip about that from the French and what they were doing. It works. I have put out several videos recently about how you can overwhelm the state. You can have people who want to suffer from the state, who want to take the violence in from the state, to expose them for who they really are, to say, I'm not going to put up with this, but it doesn't mean I'm going to defend myself. It means I'm going to show them for who they are by exposing myself directly to them. We have to think about the strategies that maybe we even fear. Okay. The strategies that might be different, that are like, wait, what is he doing? He's stripping naked in front of everybody. This is what Jesus did. According to his own teachings, he stripped naked in front of the court to say, hey, I'm bare and exposed. If you want to go get me, go get me. You're going to expose yourself. This is amazing. So go ahead. Take the floor, David, or anyone else.
I have a comment. That's great stuff, Jorge. Yes. First, there's a movie from 1982 called Gandhi. And it's a 3-hour movie. And I was really moved because in that movie, he talks about his philosophy and kind of stuff you're talking about, Corey, in one of your recent videos, was like, suffering is the highest form of love. And the state is a gang. It is violence. So if we use violence against violence, then they're going to bring out the big bombs and do what they did at Waco. God bless those souls, and children that got murdered by the state and everything over there. So it's like evolving the tactics. Love has no enemies. So if we genuinely come with agape love, not romantic love, not family love, not self-love, none of those other loves, which are great. But if we go with that sincere intention, we will win. And that's why I'm hopeful. I want to share something which I just heard about, just thought of this. I'm in a pretty conservative county now and other counties around me. I was at a meeting and the supervisor literally said, I'm out of ideas. He's kind of like this conservative leaning guy. And it's like, he just said that in a public forum. So that means even the representatives don't know what to do. So to John's point, removing your child from the school system has to be, and Corey's point, the most revolutionary action for the intergenerational component. Without statism and pledge allegiance to the flag, they got nothing. They literally have nothing, because now these devices allow us the self-directed learning accelerator. And now we need the parents, to your awesome work also, Will, is the parents they got to change. So the kids born king and queen, they're ready to go. But mom and dad are like, no, obey this and be a slave over here, indirectly. So when they said they're out of ideas, that's like, oh, we're the visionaries on the earth, man. Wow, I didn't expect that. I expect, go to these freedom conferences and, I've been to Pork Fest, beautiful, and Acapulco and Narco Vegas and all of them. And all of a sudden you're around your buddies, just like you guys right here. I wish we were in the same room together. We have a great, barbecue and eat and have some fun together. But digitally we're connected, and you are my brothers and sisters, and we high five and hug and everything. There's a vibrational frequency. For some reason, the source or God allowed us these experiences. We have a frequency. We're not better than anybody, but we had trauma, and we had experiences, and bad families and good families, and everything brought us to here where we could see through the lies of the state and be like, you guys are just thugs, man. That's all you are. And my mom was a public school teacher. My father worked in the government. So I know there's good people, but the compartmentalize and with Passio, and like we're saying, they just weren't taught about basic morality, it's wrong to do these things. So this is where it's like, okay, we're having these conversations, and the action is the exit and build strategy. So I don't know what y'all doing, Corey and Stephanie. It sounds amazing, but I'm connected with some people that are doing their own private hospital, and Mike Cullum got his own private grocery store. I think the future, the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years is all exit and build, and maybe PMAs and these paperwork stuff. But like, we're just not going to participate with you guys. We're going to take our Bitcoin or our crypto, Monero or cash or silver or whatever, or salt, however we're going to transact in currency, and we're just not going to give it to you guys anymore. We don't need to yell at your buildings any longer. We're just going to exit and build. And that just feels so much more exciting for me. And like the civil disobedience part of it, if you ever had a near-death experience, if you realize, wow, this life is precious, this life is sacred, and if I'm going to die, I might as well choose the hill that I'm going to die upon rather than be a default, back in the corner, concentration camp. It's like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my neck out there, and I'm going to do this. And if you're going to take me, then take me. But to not be violent, I think, is a very strategic action. And, that's just one reason we do have the Second Amendment. But I think it's a spiritual battle. And one last point here, and I'll conclude. But you went from monarchism to the king is the head of the state and the church, to the constitutional republic. And Ron Paul said the Constitution failed 10 years ago. And then Lysander Spooner proved it's illegitimate 150 years ago. And now we're evolving to voluntarism, in my opinion. So it's monarchism, constitutional republicanism, and now voluntarism. That's what I think. So there's these big, like 50-year frames or 100-year frames, but that's the game that we're winning, eventually planting seeds, because the technology has now empowered us to get this information out. So it is going to be challenging, but those are the big phases that I see happen. So just keep making the content. The people that are watching, keep commenting, keep spreading the information. We outnumber them by so far and vast. Once the mind control falls apart, it is over. And for me and us right here, it's already over. They've already lost. They have no authority over us and our opinions right here and conclusions. So it's just a beautiful time to be here and to share this, exciting solutions. And thanks for you guys for organizing this.
Thanks, David. I like that word power you used. That's my presentation coming up, how to will power. And here we got Leslie Powers right above me. We got all kinds of power right here. Powerhouse of people. And you know what it is? That the power is the power of imagination. It's one of the missing tools in most people out there. They can't imagine how are we going to get around all these problems, and how are we going to deal with all these things. But let's look at some more. I know we got some real good questions in the chat. Will, what question you got to bring up next? I know I've bookmarked a couple. If you don't got one, I have a couple up here. There's one question.
Yeah, I have one right here. I can pull up pull up yours as well, because there's so many comments in there. It was active. I don't want to miss any.
There's a cool question from Angela Green for Stephanie Mo Davis.
Okay, perfect.
And that is, what is the objective morality towards oneself to get over repeating an ingrained familial lie? Say, being honest on fem animus level. Does that make sense to you?
Can you repeat it?
What is the objective morality towards oneself to get over repeating an ingrained familial lie? So, Angela, if you're in the chat, if you want to expand on that, that might help a little. But I think many of us have repeating these same things throughout our family line, right? Because the parents tell the kids, and then the kids tell their kids, and they're repeating these same lies.
Yeah, I think from the animus perspective, if she's asking from this animus perspective, being a woman, and how do we face objectively some of these intergenerational lies from this feminine perspective, if that's what she's asking. Personally, I can just tell her some of the things that I've done. There's not a quick answer. It's a process. It's for the feminine perspective. It's allowing my emotions to come through as a guidance system, and then to trust my emotion no matter. I can't let my mind hijack my feeling state as far as my close relationships with my family when I'm working through issues. I can't suppress it. I can't try to analyze my way out of it. If it's something that feels wrong to me from a familial perspective, I have to let my emotions come up, and I have to let them speak. I have to be able to tell my family my feelings of what is wrong, what they did to me. I have to confront it head on. I can't suppress my emotional state when healing that trauma from the feminine perspective. That's the worst thing that we can do as we're trying to integrate our animus is to repress or suppress the emotion. It's one of the way that our trauma wants to be integrated, by addressing the feeling state. And when we suppress the feeling state in the feminine, when we're trying to integrate it, it will hijack and invert to get its needs met. And that turns into that inverted state where we get dominating and aggressive and covertly manipulative. We can do all sorts of evil things to try to get our needs met. And with the family, it's been very raw, very honest, and messy, very messy. I let things come forth, even though I don't want to go there, or I feel as though my mind has, evolved past that kind of a conversation. I don't do that. I just let the feelings come up, and I address them with truth and honesty and rawness. And I say what I need to say as my feeling state comes forth. That's how I've been able to work through some of the very deeply ingrained, repetitive familial cycles that I have on my side with my family. If I don't get real to heal and let the emotions come up, it doesn't stop. The looping just continues to go. I don't break the cycle. I don't know if that helps.
Get real to heal. I like that. Did you just come up with that? That's awesome.
No, I have a friend who says that all the time. Get real to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would recommend
I know
too,
who that is.
Leslie Powers does some great work at alivethrive.life, and her presentations really address dealing with trauma. And it seems like Angela was talking about her mother being burned as an infant, which sounds like some really traumatic experience that will definitely lead to something that's going to have to be worked through. So,
when you're
obviously, I was just going to say both Leslie and Stephanie have a lot of work that you can click on their presenter page and look at their work and find help and resources.
I think my presentation tomorrow will address that that kind of topic, because I talk about how trauma is held in our system, and trauma that comes from familial experiences, and if you want to call it a family lie, as a ingrained expectation or a trauma within a family, and how it is passed down to us generationally and energetically and often unconsciously. So when we have emotions, such as anxiety or depression or fear that comes up, when we can possibly trace it back to those generational patterns, then there's ways to address it. So I talk
like
some
a
about
virus. Yeah, the family system, it's toxic, is like a virus, and it wants to stay alive. And it comes like an egregore of energy, and it'll do anything it possibly can to stay alive, running through the family line. So if you're a female trying to do this work and you have that energy, it often does require immense work and support. And it's very painful for women to get through this energy, to break out of that, because often the people who are doing the work are also scapegoated then, as we were mentioning. So there's a lot working against you. So hopefully tomorrow, Leslie, your presentation will help to bring some clarity on this.
I think it's a beginning. And so this process is just inspired. It's made it clear to me there's stages of information that I want to share. And I actually cut back my presentation because the first foundation is the information and knowledge. And then, I'm going to move forward with more of the interventions as I go forward and seed. And so keep tuned, everybody. It's big topics.
Will,
Excellent.
You had another question you're about to bring up on the screen?
Yes, I did. Here we go. Heavy Conscious, is it wrong to harm yourself if it hurts others?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Someone in the chat was asking about suicide, and so I didn't.
Well, and I think that too is kind of the gray area, you know, like what Mark was talking about, the deadly sins, and how, you know, religions always want to make them into things that we do to ourselves. And he's saying that's kind of like the line here I'm drawing of harming others is what we're talking about here. That's the bigger deal. So is there a gray area there? Anyone have a inspiration on this one? I saw Corey and Logan.
Yeah. Well, I just want to
was
mention,
muted.
like, when it comes to a lot of analogies that people bring up, and this happens often, like, there's people who tend to bring up analogies for anything, and they tend to be like really rare scenarios most of the time, like literally like 1% of cases for when they do happen, and if they're even realistic. But there's always the underlying question of why. That it's always some analogy that leaves out so much context that I think it's like it begs the question, like, why is that happening? Why would someone want to harm themselves in the first place, or make themselves believe that's going to harm someone else? There's some situation or relationship there within that context that we're not seeing. There's missing knowledge there. And I think just by looking at the question, you start to say, well, wait, there's something here that's missing. And that would be my question in response, because it's how like the approach, and when it comes to a lot of this work, is to ask more questions, not rather than answers. The exact same thing for this question. I would be asking more questions, because this will allow the individual, if anything, to find out the best option for themselves, even if I did have the answers.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
just the fact of someone thinking through this question when they have an impulse to self-harm would make a huge difference, probably. Yeah.
I definitely think that's a gray area question, because, everything that you do is going to have an effect. And it really has to come down to the principles of what is your rightful property. So your life, your body is yours. And I mean, at the end of the day, I have to say that taking your own life is a right that you have. Is it ideal? Is it awesome? Definitely not. It's tragic. It's terrible. But no one really has the right to stop you. I mean, but that's where you get into the gray area. That has to be the final word. No one has the right. But you could also understand if a loved one walked in right before it was happening and they freaked out and pulled you off the chair or whatever it may be. You could definitely argue, and who knows, maybe 5 years later they end up thanking them for saving their life. You just don't know how these things are going to play out. But like, say you have a relationship with someone and you're not, what's up, Nate? You're not feeling it anymore, right? You've been together for years. There's a lot of care there, but you feel ready to end it. Well, that's going to hurt the other person. But that is a right that you have to take. So it's not always as black and white as just don't ever do anything that hurts anyone, because at the end of the day, you're going to have hard decisions in life. It's really, there's no way around that. That's part of just being a grown up and owning, like you have to do what's right for you. I know that sounds a little bit like moral relativism, but what's right for you within the realms of your actual objective rights that you have to take, even if it may hurt someone else, because you have to kind of take care of yourself first. You're the steward of your body, your fulfillment in life. No one else is going to care for that the way that you do. You're responsible for that. So,
I'd like to add just a complicating factor in this is, when we talk about trauma and how trauma creates compartmentalization of our consciousness and of our psyche, and it is usually a traumatized part. It is a part of a person, not the whole person, that is seeking to hurt themselves. So that suicidal part is desperate, and it's often the result of trauma. And so but when the person is in a balanced mind and their self-energy, their alignment is in place, then typically suicide is not the option that they want. And that it is I think, a moral imperative to help people stay alive so that they can come to a balanced brain to be able to think clearly about their choices. So there are a lot of nuances and complications. I'll add another example of an individual that I've met personally who developed, he was, I don't know, in his 40s or so, developed like something like ALS, a very bad disease that led to progressive deterioration of his abilities. He was a lawyer, he was intelligent, he was capable, and he watched himself and watched his family watch him deteriorate to the point where he decided to do a conscious suicide, which ended up being of relief to his family, and also painful as well, of course. Like, there's no good suicide, but it is a complicated issue. And I think, Corey, what you were saying is that when it comes down to asking more questions and not having a black and white answer, and really going into the nuances of the human experience with compassion and love, and I think, people go to that place out of mostly desperation.
I have a comment on that one too.
Sure.
Like, I agree with Logan. Yeah, it's your property. You can do what you want. But ending your life is not the best way. And, rare circumstances, like you said, Leslie, someone's got a rare disease and they're conscious. But I've been in a tight spot and I realized, oh, this is why people commit suicide. So I realized, oh, emotions can get the best of us if we're not conscious. And like, who is it? Albert Camus has a great quote. He's like, everybody eventually gets to the point where they're like, either life is worth living or life is not worth living. And that's even what Shakespeare's quote arguably is about, to be or not to be, should I stay or should I go? And, I think one of the things I realize is the people around me, I would hurt the people around me. And I have a mission and there's a purpose. And if there's some spiritual reason while I'm here, I should fight through it. So if someone's out there and you're thinking about suicide, think about the people that love you, think about your friends, think about the people that you can touch. And there's a lot of people who don't realize that there's people who have it worse than us, and they got through it and they actually had a huge impact on life. So in terms of, is it moral or not, I think, you can, it's your property, you do whatever you want. But from the higher level of who is this going to impact, I've had that in my family. Actually, there was a suicide in my family, and it really was devastating to his children and grandchildren and siblings and parents. I mean, it just was a bomb in the family. And even now, it's been 15 or so years, maybe 20 years now, but it really impacted us. And it was just like, wow. So eliminating ourselves is not the answer. If you're going to go do something like that, go do something heroic and, go do a kamikaze on someone predator out there is going to matter. They say, if you're going to shoot a king, kill him. So, but life is up and downs, man. This is the every day I feel happy, every day I feel sad. This is the roller coaster of life, and this is what we signed up for, apparently. So that's my 2 cents on there. Your life matters. You're important, and you make a difference just by being here.
We're valuable. And speaking of valuable, I'm very happy to see Nate made it to join us. Thanks for joining us, Nate.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And sorry
Fantastic.
I'm late. Things are happening. I just had to step away for a little while, and but I'm really happy to be here with you guys. You guys are all amazing. Just the work that I've seen from today, it's just mind blowing, more than I thought it would be. It's a wonderful feeling. It really makes me feel very hopeful, and I'm extremely inspired. And sorry, I'm not really I didn't get a chance to pay attention to what you guys were talking about.
No, that's fine.
On here.
Just
you had a great
on the next
presentation.
question, but
Yeah.
your presentation just blew us away.
I loved
Everybody
it.
was so fired up in the chats. It was really neat to see, and I was just blown away, not only by your graphic arts, by your presentation, the content as well. It was very, very well thought out and presented. Thank you so much for that, Oculus.
Appreciate it. That means a lot.
Glad you made it, Nate.
Yeah.
One quick idea to tie in, because I really think this is relevant to what we're talking about. Just because you have a right doesn't mean it's the best choice. You have the right to poison your body with toxic foods all day. Doesn't mean it's a great thing to do. you still have that, kind of responsibility for yourself of conscious discernment and, making the best choices possible for yourself.
Yeah. And I think we have to
Yeah.
take into consideration that our actions do have consequences on the long term. And and I don't think you can deny that certain extreme actions that could be considered rights don't have very harmful consequences intergenerationally to the future, right?
Right.
On that, there's actually another question that really ties in with this one as well. And there was sort of some discussion in the chat about it as well. Alexander asked, according to natural law, natural rights, objective morality, private property, and sovereignty, is aborting a fetus or a baby a natural law transgression? I think this is kind of very similar. The discussion we were having about, is it wrong to harm oneself? At what point is it wrong to harm the baby? So these are the same. And I want to, real quick, before we jump to answers on this, thank Corey for what you said, because I think that's very true. And we bring up these theoretical, you can always come up with some theoretical situation that puts somebody in a tricky situation to answer it. And what we're not trying to do is provide people with answers to these questions, because there aren't. It depends on the situation and the context of every situation. That's why we can't have man-made laws and rules, because
there's no guaranteed safety in this reality. It doesn't exist.
There's also not always a right choice and a wrong choice available to you. Sometimes you just have two choices. They're both freaking hard. They're both going to have really undesirable consequences, and you just have to go and really you can't, no one person has the authority to say like who made the best choice, because there just wasn't a clear, it's one thing to say, hey, here's an easy choice. Don't rape, don't steal, right? Those are easy black and white choices. But sometimes when you have these certain kind of situations, the trolley or whatever have you, that people cook up for these kind of discussions, it's like, you can argue both sides. It's like just a regular kind of debate situation of like, okay, pick a side, argue these are the reasons why this would be the right thing. And you can just kind of say, well, I wouldn't know until it was me in that situation, and then you have to actually feel the weight of that decision.
Yeah, I'll actually go first. I'll speak on that. Someone that actually had to experience that situation. One of the worst decisions me and my partner at the time ever made. But understanding, is abortion a right? Well, what is a right? A right is any action that does not cause harm to another. So you are one, and then you are more than one when you are pregnant. So yes, absolutely, it is a transgression against nature. Now, again, like what you were saying, Logan, doesn't make it an easy decision. It's going to be hard. There's no guaranteed safety in this issue. So, using the tough justifications of rape and all that, yes, horrible. It's an atrocity. It is a transgression and a violation, but stuff's going to happen. But regardless, you still have to make that choice. You have to live with the consequences, whatever that may be. But again, it's your choice. So,
and your karmic debt as well. It's like, by making that choice, you're accepting whatever comes with that.
But I will say this, because this question comes up a lot, in a society where the foundation of nature is understood, objective morality, we're going to see a lot of the dis-ease and the psychological issues that the majority of people have start to, dissipate, where there might not be as much murder or rape, sexual assault, or any of this thing, right? Because now you're dealing with a higher level of conscious in a majority in society. So I will put that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Though, Will, I do want to say, I don't want to limit our terminology to just objective morality, because people can simply understand statism and the nature therein, that belief system, and that would yield the same results technically, because people are using their own individual conscience rather than following the commands of an authority. This would also yield not just like a higher evolution in the moral conscience for people to decide what is right and wrong, but it would allow people to pursue that for themselves without set standards and restrictions. I think Taoism is also good as a philosophy to help detail why it's not always the best thing to impose and say, this is what morality is, this is what this is, or this is what that is. because although that is helpful, and yeah, most of us agree violence is wrong and these things, yeah, totally. And now we can see these gray areas. We have to realize some of the nuances that were mentioned.
Sure.
So this is great because it's wholeness, not perfection, kind of like what Here's the Truth said in the beginning of their presentation.
And if we're doing that internal work and actually healing and aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions all with true morality, then and we have the true freedom to make choices, including mistakes, then when someone, their conscience and empathy is online, they have the freedom to actually make a choice such as having an abortion. They feel that consequence. Will, you said yourself, one of the decisions that you regret the most in life. Well, then a mother who has gone through that will be more likely to feel that regret and talk to her daughter who's thinking about that decision and say, look, it's your life, but if I could do anything, I would go back and change that, and that might change. So in other words, letting people feel the weight of their own karmic consequences will collectively shift things, because collectively as a society, if we're feeling that weight, generally it will be a lot more frowned upon, of just like, well, we know where that road leads and it's not a good place. There are these fringe situations where maybe that's a viable choice. It's still not pretty, but maybe that option should exist in these very limited circumstances. But for the general, in general, it's not a good choice to make. It's not an ideal choice.
If I can mention the actual social engineering behind this, right? Once you understand Planned Parenthood and all this, here's something that most people won't say across the board, alternative and mainstream. Abortion is being used as a contraceptive, right? This is a fact. In this day and age, people aren't wearing condoms. They're not taking, they don't have the awareness. They don't have the self-care and the self-respect. So more people are getting pregnant, right? So this is a fact. We can see this increase, and it is promoted in culture, in society. And this is why, Planned Parenthood, Plan B, all this stuff, they capitalize on that ignorance. So
I'd like to hear what the women have to say about the topic.
Awesome.
I was going to say the same thing. I especially like to hear from Sabrina. You've been kind of quiet.
Yeah. No, I think it's a difficult, very difficult subject. And I think that, the answer of whether abortion is a right or, suicide is a right, it's kind of like looking at the context of, wow, we actually have to ask that in a society, because our society, we have this money system and we're under such stress and difficult conditions where it puts people in these situations where they feel like they have to take these measures. It's just, it's sad to think that someone would feel in that way, that they would need to do that or have to go through that. Like, maybe the woman can't financially support the child, or they know that the child will end up being homeless and have like a really difficult life, like all these different things because of the way that our society is kind of built, and these structures that keep us oppressed and enslaved and kind of like, trying to keep us down all the time. And, I think if you took the monetary system apart in a way, or if you took those things, I think there would be a lot less suicides, a lot less abortions, things like that. But I think in an ideal world, I would say no to both of those, but that's not the reality of the situation. People have really difficult situations. They have, just different life circumstances, and there's always exceptions to things. So yeah, it's sad. I really hope that, that we can work on ways that people feel like they don't have to do that. That's why we have people like Leslie and Stephanie and other people that are working to, and doctors and other people to help on that other end. It's like, what's the proactive thing we can do? What can we do ahead of time? I'm an early childhood special ed teacher. So how can we get them when they're really young to have a really healthy environment, with the family and singing and caring? And how can we support the families to have better finances and teach the parents like good skills with, entrepreneur skills so that they can make money, so that they can survive. All these things are so important so that we can have a healthy society. So yeah, trying to be proactive on the other side so that we don't have these really sad situations that we're
Education and being the best defense. Yeah.
in. Yeah.
I got a comment on abortion because
That was a
this
beautiful
is
answer, Sabrina, by the way. Go ahead, David.
yeah, the abortion issue is the most divisive issue ever because they're dealing with babies and children and the perpetuation of the human species. But the solution that I got was, when do you define a human being? When does the sperm and the egg become a living human being? And that's up to you. So as you said, Logan, like whether you do or you don't, that's a tough decision. You're going to keep the baby or remove the baby. And even who's the Block? He's the freedom guy, but it's like he talks about where it's like it's a invader of the female body. So you can justify abortion, you can justify keeping it, but either way, you got to live with that decision of keeping it or not keeping it. And it's none of the government's business what you do or what you don't do. So you got to define when the semen and the egg become a life. And my conclusion for me to give me peace of mind was between 4 and 6 weeks is when the heart begins. The heart starts beating in that time. So before that, seems like it's not a human being to me. And then after that, it is a human being. And then there's all these other complications. So anytime you're talking about politics and these, what's your position on a position on abortion? This really helped me out because we're talking about transcending the state. We're talking about no more coercion in our society ever. We're talking about ostracizing violent thugs. And then they throw in this wrench to take you off your kilter of what you're really discussing. And these are one of those rare questions where it's like, well, I don't know. But for me, it was when the baby's heart starts beating for me, then that's when I say that's a human being, and then you respect that life. But it's up to you guys to decide, when you determine that when the sperm becomes a human. This is, I think, a better question.
Regardless, the state needs to get the fuck out of people's business. Period.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking the whole time, right?
Exactly.
I mean, even with the first question we got, right? It's like, why can't government just step down? It's like government doesn't step down. It's our beliefs that create such a thing. But it
Government
doesn't
is not an entity. It's not a
Right.
thing. It's
What
people
is
that
it? Like,
hold
exactly.
concept. And act on it.
Yeah, it's such a divisive issue because, like you said, David, it's my body, my choice, but it's two bodies in the same space. It's literally, that's why it's such a gray area, because it's both the baby's body and the mother's body. But at the end of the day, with these type of questions, when we're talking about how would things work in a free society and should this be allowed and should that be allowed, the only question you have to ask is, it's not about what should be allowed. Would you personally, if you think something shouldn't be allowed, would you personally go and stop someone from doing that? Would you actually, and could you? How could you actually prevent every woman in the world from having an abortion? You can't. So you can frown on it all you want, but unless you're willing to just go on a crusade and knock the coat hanger out of every person's hand as it's happening, it's a moot point at that level of thinking, anyways, of like what should be allowed.
Even before I really discovered a lot of this work and really understood this thing about rights and freedom and natural law, because I didn't get a lot of this for a lot of years up until my, get close to 30 was when I really started digging in all this. I always thought, like, why should I even have an opinion about that? Number one, I'm a man, and so if a woman's going to have this done to her, it's none of my business. It's her body, not mine, unless I was the one who was directly involved with the situation. Then it would have, what I thought about it might come into play. But we come from this paradigm of thinking of like, we're going to make a rule for everybody, because that's the way the paradigm people are used to thinking in, that we can have a hard and fast rule for things and just, we'll just make the rule. And anyone under 13 who gets pregnant or whatever, that's the rule. Like, no, which pregnancy are you talking about? Which abortion are you talking about? Which situation are you talking about? Each situation is different. And that's the way we need to start kind of shifting our mind into this different paradigm of thinking of like, we're not just like trying to make rules for everybody or what everybody's allowed or not allowed to do. That's like, That's government thinking, you know.
Yeah.
Right,
Real quick,
read
I
me.
do want to hear from Leslie and Stephanie if they wish. I will throw this out there from the animist perspective that I try to apply in everything. The woman knows when she is pregnant. It's a feeling. It's intuition. She's connected with her body. She knows it. I think at that point, one became two, right? Going back to the state of mentalism. So something to throw out there for sure, to think about. But Leslie or Stephanie, do you guys have anything that you would like to add?
Go ahead, Leslie.
I don't really have anything I want to add. I feel like you guys said
Sure.
good points, and I don't
Well,
really want to add anything.
I would say that, we live in a world where people don't appreciate life.
Yeah.
And that's just really the bottom line. I mean, I always ask people, okay, well, if the baby isn't alive right after conception, where is it dead? It's not dead. There's no death in between.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's life. It just continues. It's a continuous life. And, the way that I understand it from a symbolic standpoint is that, a baby, the conception is a marriage. It's a very sacred marriage. It's, the sperm meets the egg, they marry. And it's interesting because, they even have a picture of what that looks like. And it looks like a wedding ring, just like, the wedding ring of when like a solar eclipse with the moon. And it's very interesting. It's very synchronistic. It's very, it's a very special thing when we understand that. But obviously, we have to understand that, if people don't have any understanding, if people aren't raised, so you have these, 15 or, however old these children are, because they're not adults, but they are in, adult bodies. And they don't understand. They're not raised by adults. They're raised by children. And so we have children raised by children, and therefore this is just a very difficult thing that we're dealing with, and we're waking up to it, and we're realizing that we've really fallen, and we have to keep putting this at people's feet, so that way they can never say, how was I supposed to know? This is why we have to teach the young from an early age about life and how to appreciate life. But obviously you can't really necessarily appreciate life until you've experienced it. But I know just by the way that I understand and experience, or how I appreciate life, I measure that up against those who really just don't have any of that in their heart. They don't. Most people are ready to completely end lives and support the ending of life without really knowing that consciously, because I think most people who are that way are unconscious, which is, I would say, the majority of the people on this planet. But it's a very touchy subject, and I think that people are just very dishonest when it comes to this subject. And I just think that that's really what it's about, is people who are dishonest. They haven't found appreciation of life yet. And there's so much that goes into it, but it's a big can of worms,
Yeah, it is a big can of worms. I'll just say that I think that it's very complicated.
Yeah.
Because of the impact on women and the women in this particular the world as it is today, and going back in history of women, and and so I just think it's a very complicated topic that will take a lot more conversation than what we can give justice to, I think, in this short roundtable. So I'm hesitant to open up the cans of worms that I think about. And
yeah, we could do a 4-hour roundtable just on that topic.
Yeah.
It's highly emotional, which is kind of tricky for a lot of people.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be aware of the Planned Parenthood thing is a big one too, Will, like you said, to know that, was it 70 million African Americans have been aborted over the last 70 years. And eugenicists use this, that's the founder of Planned Parenthood. So it's like, What's that about? So emergency situations, or to turn it into a business, and now they're using fetus parts for jabs and makeup stuff. It's like, what are you guys doing? So there's a big can of worms. I agree, Leslie.
And
Yeah.
what you just mentioned is stuff that they may not even know. The mothers who are okay with that practice, they
Right.
may not even know some
They
of
may
those
not.
facts, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and Sabrina made such a good point too. I feel like, you know, it just shows like we're seeing so many outcomes. These are not causes, these are effects. These are us seeing manifestations of all the evil going on in the world, and we're seeing them. You know, we're in this shape where women are pushed up against the wall, like Leslie's saying, or what Sabrina was saying, to make these terrible choices, you know, where we need to go back and work on the fundamental issues of how we treat one another, how we set up our communities and society, and how we trade and such, you know, from the beginning. And instead of having this kind of like deal with the chaos as it's happening kind of paradigm, like, oh, there's all these ladies that are pregnant now that we don't know what we're going to do with the babies. Like, we should have been thinking about that leading up to that, you know. And now we're in this position where there's a lot of people in a lot of screwed up situations that don't have easy answers all around the world, you know. And so we're kind of like trying to pick out which ones are the priorities that we can actually work on, you know. But at least this is a space where we can kind of pontificate and stretch our natural law understandings, and this is a good topic for it. So I'm not saying it's not a good topic. So yeah.
Steph,
Great
Steph,
input.
did you want to say anything?
I think everything that everyone is touching on is really relevant. I think the continuation of education and care in communities, to think about not just the lack of education, but so many young women or women in general who are in impoverished situations and have these difficult happenings and get pregnant and, you know, abort. They don't even have community or someone to care about them enough to talk to them or educate them. So it's a huge issue, and it's a huge can of worms. And I just think from our standpoint, having this continuation of corroboration and community and not competition amongst us, and really start to demonstrate what a community that cares looks like. And if one of us gets in trouble here, the other one, someone else can stand up and say, hey, let me talk to you about this. And just to start to demonstrate what healthy care in a community looks like, even if it's complicated. I find that so many institutional settings right now that are really disintegrating are competing amongst themselves. And I think that we've committed to overcoming this hump of competing with each other, even though we're all different and we're saying things in different ways. We have this through line, this fundamental principle that we all care about so deeply that we don't even go to competition. It's a true care. And I think that is just so important to demonstrate in the world, because we need to be more of a family, because women who don't have this education or, you know, children raising children type of mentality, that's what gets us to where we are, and it has to stop. And we're all in the middle of it, or at the beginning stages of a real true shift. So the long game, as everybody was saying, we got to stick it out. Some of this may never get better in our lifetime, but we have to still commit to doing what's right.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
What does Pocket
well
think
said.
about this?
He says he thinks his daddy should do a presentation. Which, no, that's what I was going to say real quick. And then we'll go to, you know, our last question and probably wrap it up in about 15 minutes. All your guys' input is awesome, but I think this is a powerful topic. And yes, I think more people should do presentations and have, and talk about this type of knowledge, right? But from bringing it back to the sacred union of sex, and, you know, that sacred union, and we need moral education. We need more education. So
take it seriously.
You know, kind of just dabbling on, well, is the abortion issue is kind of dealing in the effects, right? We want to get to the causal factors, and that would be through education of, you know, the sexual union and this kind of stuff. So I think that's really important.
The best
Janet,
outcome is to make it to where people don't even desire that as a viable option, because there's just so many better options. The world is in such a rough place, and they have the means and the resources to take care of it and things like that.
Yeah.
I almost feel like sometimes we're like, our humanity, we're like a bunch of kindergartners with machine guns. You know, it's like we have this amazing technology of our bodies and our minds, but we're like, no one gave us the basics on how to use it and how to deal with this stuff, and we're just like blowing each other away left and right. It's just like a mess, although kindergartners would probably do better.
Real quick, we'll do this question. It was directed to Nate from Angela Green. The Oculus has the crystalline lens. Do you agree our ancient history is interpretation of what is visible or more?
Trying to understand that question.
Yeah, let me. She really wanted to get that question asked. Angela, if you're in the chat, can you please maybe resubmit that question?
I mean, I guess it's saying, the way that we interpret the ancient history in an invisible way, like the invisible part of ancient history. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm really
it's okay.
sorry.
We got another one until maybe Angela will get it.
Do you need guys
restate
understand what that's saying? Okay,
Not really.
Just making sure, because I'm just trying to understand.
Here's another one from Beagle Eye Visions. Does anyone have a profound experience that really kicked them into gear to take truth seriously?
Oh man, I like this one. This is a great question because it's something I love asking people that I've interviewed over the years. Because for me, I had a pretty dramatic waking up experience. I use you'll see in my presentation, I've done it more than once, the Matrix, where Neo wakes up in that chamber. And that's what it felt like to me. Like when he looked over the edge and he saw rows and rows of people in these pods, that's how I felt. And for me, what happened was I really started digging into 9/11. And it took me 10 years after 9/11. It was 2011. And then I started studying that. And then I ran into Dean Wigington with the geoengineering. And I started watching the sky all the time and trying to talk to people about that.
Same.
And at the same time, I was going through some health issues. And so I started quitting all my bad habits one at a time. No more drinking, no more pot for a while there. I quit everything I could think of until I was just sober and clean. And I had this incredible awakening experience where I was just constant all day getting a download. It felt like a download from the universe, and I couldn't sleep. I wasn't tired for days on end, and it was just the strangest experience. And I think my body was detoxing. I think I was going through a midlife crisis. There's a lot of real other explanations for it, but during that time, what I went through in my personal world was a total revelation of realization that even if I was able to explain this truth that I can now see, people aren't ready to hear it. They don't want to know. Even if it is something that's important, they don't want to hear it. And it wasn't that, when you start talking about chemtrails back then, nobody knew what you were talking about. You were just a nut, not like now where some people kind of get geoengineering, but people were looking at me like I was literally crazy. And even as careful as I could bring things up, and I knew I was conscious of the fact that the things I was bringing up seemed wild to people, they weren't ready to think about it or talk about it. It wasn't that they had a good argument to make that would put me in line, because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for someone who could reasonably tell me why the stuff I was thinking was crazy. That would have made me feel better. No, Chris, you're just a crazy conspiracist. Let me explain to you where you're off. But they couldn't do that because they didn't want to go through that thinking process of the Trivium with me, because they didn't have the willpower to do it, because they were afraid of what the answers might give. And that became evident the more people I talked to. And that was my true awakening. Wasn't the geoengineering or the chemtrails or 9/11 conspiracy, which are all interesting and very real things to look into. But the real awakening was recognizing where humans are at. And what Mark's talking about, seeing that over the years, more and more and more has sunk in just how true it is and just how real it is. The shape we're in is bad, man. It's a tough spot, man. So it takes a lot of hope and love that from these type of presenters to do this work, because we know the situation is very sinister and it is tough. And that's what the awakening is, really. It's a realization of just how fucked up this situation we're in.
Right.
I'll pass it on.
Well, my first awakening was Santa Claus. Being
Fair.
I was downstairs. I was actually upstairs. I was hiding on the stairs waiting for Santa Claus, and then I saw my mom and dad walk through the door with all the toys, and that was the first time that I started to question reality.
Your first conspiracy theory awakening.
Well, I will
Yeah.
say,
Mhm.
real quick, Nate, I interviewed not like pretty much everyone here except Sabrina about your experiences. If anybody's curious, like they want a full in-depth like interview, like I not that it took up the whole interview, but I have a whole playlist on my channel for ex-statist compilations, and it's like over 50 different people. So it's like really powerful, in my opinion, to just go through that one day. It's also on the Liberated website. And if anybody's out there wants to share their experiences, I'm totally willing to do the same interview with you. So just throwing that out there because it's something I want to continue being how powerful I saw it was.
That's
So-
awesome, Corey. I love that.
I got a comment for the question was, when was the moment when you took truth serious? I think that was what I got from that. For me, was the school system kicked it into gear. Yeah. So once I found out the school system was deliberately designed to dumb me down, I took that personal. And I knew when I was in school, I had to get permission to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water. I'm like, this is weird. What's going on around me? And then that's when I got into contact with John Gatto through Richard Grove. Thank you, brother. And I started building a relationship with him, and then got into business with him. And then before that, one of my mentors, who's a really successful guy, he said, find an injustice on the earth and spend your life trying to correct that injustice. And so it's been a constant of like putting pieces together and realizing my life matters. I'm an important guy to myself. And then seeing that in other people, right? Self-knowledge is the game. So once I love and care about myself, I love and care about you guys because I do it to myself. And you're just as special as me. And so then seeing the history, the Federal Reserve, like I said, 9/11, all these things, like, damn, this has been going on a long time. So how am I going to throw my life into the thing and try to make a splash so that generations behind me will be like, dude, I'm glad that guy was here, because that's what we do about JFK or MLK or Spooner and Rothbard and John Gatto and all these guys that made a difference in their life. We're in the same game as well. So it's like we get the opportunity to play that game, and we can be in the stands and be a spectator, or we can get on the court. It's up to us. And so just that was the school system was the big one for me. I was like, because I was raised in a small town, dude. My hometown has 3,000 people on it. Okay. One school, one middle school, one high school. And that was it, man. I grew up in picturesque mountain, beautiful area. And I thought everything was like the Andy Griffith show, everything's perfect. Right. And then you find out everything's inverted, and we are the ones we've been waiting for. Right. So this and also some DMT and psilocybin really helped me out too.
I'll share really fast. When I was a kid, I don't remember exactly what age, but I was old enough to realize that there were like all these religions in the world. And I realized, like, how can any one of them be right or have the the monopoly on truth? And I knew that one, like the church my parents took me to, couldn't have been all right, and things that they were saying didn't make sense to me. So I pretty much rejected all religion and decided there's probably some truth among all of them. And that's what I want to find. So that was kind of like my life mission that I put on hold for a long time. And I feel like I've come back to.
I would say for me that it's a bunch of little awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always kind of had that seeker energy in me, but all along the way it seemed like steps towards realizing like, oh, that's bullshit, everything's bullshit. So yeah, a lot of little synchronicities, and
it's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience as that. There's been stages, but when I really think about it, there was 3 films of all things. I guess that's just, I connect with that type of medium more. I used to read a lot when I was younger and kind of quit after a while. That's a whole other thing. But those 3 films really, there's other things too, but there's something about these 3 films that were very impactful that created a radical paradigm shift for me. And somewhat to less, I don't know. It's hard to say which one was more or less because they each had their place in the journey. But real quick, the first one was What the Bleep Do We Know?, which is a documentary, very well made, all about quantum physics. And it was so profound to me at the time. And that was really what kind of got me to first break out of the religious mindset. I was 19 years old. I was already kind of lukewarm in my passion for the church and all that kind of stuff. And then that just really, but I went all the way from there, all the way into deep atheism and materialism. And so the next step was I had a friend bring me to his dorm when I was in the military, in the Air Force station over there in England. And he showed me this film called Wake Up Call. And it was like this compilation of loose change. It had some Alex Jones bits. It was like this kind of patchwork of different other conspiracy documentaries. So that woke me up to the conspiracy stuff. And then the final nail in the coffin was Mark Passio's not Natural Law. It was the What on Earth is Happening presentation, which I think is such a great introductory piece of his work, because it's such a tapestry. It really gives you kind of like my presentation today was like each little piece you could do a whole lengthy presentation on, but it gives you that big bird's eye view. And
Which one?
What on Earth is Happening?
I didn't know there was one of his called What on Earth is Happening.
Mm-hmm. And I always think, I'm like, I can't remember how I even found it. I just came across it online somewhere back in like 2011. That's when I discovered Mark, way back in the day. And he was still, a fair bit younger and less well known at the time. And I mean, it blew my mind in so many ways. I watched it several times in a row and took notes on every single slide and just had this huge paradigm shift. So those three films for me were the most impactful, that really kind of got me to where I am today more than anything else.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I do want to say, Stephanie, you said you had a family member who was like 17 or whatever. I mean, I think around that age group, like 17 and 19, especially I think heading into like early 20s, which is where like I still am, like you're finding yourself, you're realizing,
the age of reason.
Yeah, you have like, oh wow, I'm conscious. Like I can see everything. I have the ability to think for myself. I have to figure out what I'm doing. I'm getting out of college. I'm getting out of the school programming all my life. And so like that age is really good. I mean, because if you talk to someone who's like 50 or older, they're already like deeply programmed, but someone who's younger might be more open to it, although it depends on a lot of different factors. The thing is that I think what's the key, like what brought me in was like the energy and the fun. And I think we can add that to the space too. Like I was talking to David, like his energy, it was stinking, just radiated to me immediately the minute he started talking. I'm like, you should be a speaker, like go out there in the street, start speaking, just start doing things. I think people can start doing that. If anybody has any ideas around strategy, reach out to me, or if you want ideas, because I have so many different ideas and things that have not been done yet. I'm still looking for people here in Florida who want to do like on the street interviews with me, because I just need someone else, like a cameraman or somebody who really wants to do that. I'm still figuring it out. I have people that can do it, but it's just like everybody's got time frames and all this jazz, and I want people who are devoted for the truth. And I know John Peniel Chidester, he's in the chat sometimes. He's always popping in. He's cool. He's from Florida. But if anyone else wants to join in, more the merrier. We can start up more things. So just wanted to throw that out there, because I think the energy is the key in trying to do content that really attracts eyes. I know if I was like 18, I started researching at 13. I know if I was like 18, I would definitely like watch on the street interviews. That was something that was like really popular and still is pretty popular today. So
that was a big thing. Once I got the initial seed of truth about what true meaning of anarchy from Mark, I became familiar with Larkin Rose and Adam Kokesh. And say what you want about the guy, but his man on the street videos were a powerful deprogramming school for me, that I went through every single video, and that was what basically unraveled the whole lie of statism for me. So you're definitely onto something with that format, because it's like acting out the conversation that you're having with yourself in your own head. He's the voice of reason, and then the other guy's the programming, and they're just like, well, how would this work? And what about this? And it's all just kind of working out.
They're doing it for you. You don't even have to sit there and ask the questions yourself. Like those 5 questions I put in every video, like the Larkin Rose questions, like, do you have the right to give this, that, that type of thing. Like, but if it's being asked to someone else, someone like you, and you can relate to them in a sense, it's kind of interesting. And then you can see where people are in this world and how the mentality is as an outsider. And that's kind of like a coach-client relationship in health coaching. So I think it's really powerful. Yeah. I think ideas along those lines we have to think about for sure. And if any of you guys want to come down to Florida, you let me know.
Mhm.
He's really
Excellent.
letting it be known. That's awesome what you're doing, Corey.
Well, we just got to do it, man.
If I were there, I'd help you down.
Yeah. I'll speak about my kind of my catalyst. Well, from the family and how I was raised, government was always bullshit. I inherently kind of recognized it at a very young age. Even in public school, I thought the whole system was a kind of a joke. I didn't do homework. I was just like, I don't know why I'm here. It's like a circus. I thought it was kind of funny. The police and military was the same thing, even though, some of my aunts and uncles were in the military and stuff, but it wasn't, it was kind of scoffed at in my family. But the catalyst was in my early 30s when coming out of my music career and found myself in my own self-induced addiction to opiates and starting to become a father. My girlfriend at the time was pregnant with my daughter, and all of a sudden the responsibility, the pressure hit me of how the fuck did I get in this mess? And I literally had to do shadow work in the mirror, and it took me deep into my own psychology and how I tick and why I do the things that I do, because it was mind-boggling how I got myself in this position. And that opened me up to psychology, which then led me into occultism. And from there, that just opened up a can of worms, eventually leading me to like Mark Passio, Michael Tsarion, and also DMT, coming out of probably, I would say, about a year and a half being sober, and just having this thirst for self-knowledge and knowledge of how reality operated. DMT just fell right on my lap, and I had a really good session, multiple sessions, and it was mind-blowing. I'm a huge advocate of plant medicines and this kind of stuff, but responsibly. You have to understand what they are and what they're used for. It's not a crutch or a Band-Aid. The work is still yours to do. It's almost like gaining insight or information that can be utilized. So that was my catalyst, and then it was off to the races, especially after watching Mark's first presentation that I saw was the Cult of Ultimate Evil. So that was it.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing all these. I was gonna say, aside from my Santa Claus awakening, it was Zeitgeist that really got me, and I think that's probably got more people than anything out there, as far as I know. But from there, just I got really negative into Alex Jones, but the good part of the negative awakening, I'm really thankful for that, because it really helped me see all the other the negative part of the world and what's going on, and that sent me into I found, who was it, Alan Watts, and quite a few others. But I think the one thing, Douglas Martin actually turned me on to Passio. He woke me up to Passio. I actually tried to resist Passio because once I heard he was a ex-Satanist, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to listen to this guy. He's just, he's probably an operative, or he's just, I had that stupid mindset. And, but then like a month later, I meditated on that, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty stupid. I'm going to have to go listen to that, because even if he is, I still need to know about that a little further. And then once I, listened to his natural law seminar, but by the 10th time, I think I really started to understand what was really going on. It took me a while, but I really pushed myself, and I kept taking notes. But the thing, like, I've had all like what John said earlier, all these, there's just a accumulation of awakenings. just so many. But I think me failing, just like even going to the seed conference, even though I didn't know that I was going to be, talking. I've always had a problem talking in front of people, in front of crowds and all that stuff. But I realized this is something that I haven't really, said in the open, is that I was, because of, the whole pandemic bullshit, I was drinking, and I was in a bad place because I was around a lot of people who were most everybody that was around me was on the side of believing everything, and I was very isolated where I was. I had no one to talk to other than my girlfriend, who she didn't really understand what was really going on. So I had to, I was working on her while, I met her like while this was all going on right in the beginning. But I, also, this was, the seed conference was supposed to come up, and man, I was really, even though I was so serious about getting this information out, I was kind of giving up on myself a little bit. It is weird. It's a very strange place to be, but I really was. And I think, once I did that conference and I realized like how unprepared I was and how damaged I was from, being in this bad environment, it really made me shift hard and really start taking life more serious, because I started to look at myself in the mirror and realize, dude, you're putting all this knowledge within yourself, and you're starting to, go out and talk about this stuff, and you're being dishonest with yourself by taking in this substance that is killing your spirit, because that's exactly what it does. And I'm not against alcohol, but I was, starting to abuse it. And it was a very tough personal thing that I was going through. It really was just destroying me. And so I really had to, I had an awakening. I realized, like, you are doing such an awful thing to yourself. You have to snap out of this. You have to come back from this. And then I said, no more. I got to get out of this. I got to get away from this. And I did. And I immediately, my mind started to clear. I started to feel myself get lighter and start to remember things and start to be more, confident and start to be more me, and it's one of the greatest things. And also going through this somehow, another huge awakening that I had during all this is, my mind was always like, stay away from the things that are scary, which is what most of us do. And when I thank God for, Mark for many things, but one of the things that I really woke up to was Mark demonstrating Freemasonry, one of the, major mystery traditions. And when I really started to, dive into that thing that's so scary, that's when and then also Douglas Martin's work and Albert Churchward, man, I really started to have an awakening and really started to feel my spirit come to life and start to understand what's really going on here. And so that really kicked me into high gear, was that really, truly all that, as a combination. But, there's a lot more to it. But
awesome account, man.
There is no coincidence that the abolitionists were also the starters of voluntarism, the temperance movement, and spiritualism. Like, all those four ideas were all jam-packed in that one century because they all grew together. I'm just to summarize, like, the reason why we bring in all these concepts.
We're the next wave, man. I feel that deep in my soul. Like, we're taking this and we're the next, Mark kind of pioneered this new kind of school of thought, and then we're taking that and we're passing that baton and moving forward. And now there's a whole wave of us, and I see that we're on the precipice, because at a certain point there's going to be a great demand for this type of information. We're not there yet, but the worse things get and the more people are starting to wake up, they're going to be looking for answers. They're like, the media's bullshit, TV's bullshit, politicians are bullshit. Like, where do we go for truth? And then there's all of us who've been out here doing this work for years. We've got all this content, and then they can go and find one of us that they resonate with and they connect with, and it's all ready and waiting for them, and we're just way ahead of the curve. That's truly how I see it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I agree, dude.
Yep.
I agree, man. Build it and they will come, and they're coming, dude. Like John said, after you 10 years ago, you're protested at the buildings. Eventually, they're going to realize they don't care. These politicians don't care. So we're just going to build the world, and they're like, man, there's got to be an idea that's based on self-ownership and personal responsibility and voluntary relationships. They're like, here's decades of information. So this is, I think, an invitation to everybody out there. Keep producing content. Keep producing books, videos, courses, songs, music, art, dance, everything. It's coming. It is coming. Guaranteed. Statism is going down, and volunteerism and personal self-ownership is coming, because it's true. It is the truth. They try to keep it away from us, and now it's out of the bag. And we got 12 great content creators right here, people listening right now, and they can feel it. It's a vibrational thing. Imagine if we're in person and feeling it. It's like, this is the real thing that's coming. So it's this wave. We're going to get our surfboards, catch on the wave, and we're going to ride to freedom and intergenerational impact and success for the children.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Preach it, brother.
What about RFK Jr.?
We all needed a good laugh.
Haven't we learned our lesson yet? Come on, guys. How many times
I
we got to
appreciate your
get
energy.
Hey,
said,
you know,
David. Well said.
talking about our awakening back when I was going through this stuff, it was few and far between the presenters I could find. And Mark Passio was the only one out there talking about natural law. And if I were to be at that same place that I was at in 2011, 2012 right now, there'd be Will Keller, Sabrina, Leslie, Chris, Stephanie, John, Logan, Corey, David, Nate, all talking about this at once, plus all these people in the chat. How much faster would that have gone for me? I wouldn't have had to go through nearly the self-work that I had to go through, and I think that you're right, David. It's coming. Things are changing. I mean, I don't want to give anybody false hope, but we need to have that attitude of winning to win this thing. So
Yeah.
Will,
We
I
have
would
to be
love
able to
hear-
visualize it working, right?
Yes.
We have to have
Imagination,
the
folks.
image in our minds of
Well, how about
our
this?
actions having effect.
Homeschooling has tripled in some areas over the last 3 years. And so they got estimated 5 billion people, 5 billion families that are homeschooling now. Imagine the next year, imagine 2 years, it's going to go 10 million. And once enough people have removed their children from the statist religious cult programming, it's over. The school system is such a critical part of it. And then the media reinforces it and everybody reinforces it. But then once we know all these flags and all these coercive organizations are just gang flags, and like, I know there's good people in there, but like, it's just a violent gang, as Spooner said 150 years ago and his other abolitionists and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, we've been under this deep mind control. They've tried to keep it from us. And so the hope is that for me, in the education world, is homeschooling has doubled and tripled in some areas and counties and states, and these guys are afraid, so they're going to keep trying to clamp down and say all these stuff, but like, the consciousness and the spiritual stuff and the energy is coming. So I have real hope. I don't want to, say anything to false hope. I have sincere, real hope that we are making a difference. I've seen an Acapulco go from 120 people to 2,000 people in a few years. And so, like you said, Chris, you have all these different content creators, musicians, and artists, and they know what time it is. It's about personal self-ownership, sovereignty, personal responsibility, and consensual cooperative relationships. So I want to put that into the hope that the homeschooling is doubling, tripling. So I have genuine hope about that.
Right on.
Excellent.
So I say we go out with a big bang and hit up the Funnel 3 theme song before we leave tonight. What do you say, Will?
I think it's time to play
Great
some
chat,
music.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Great energy.
Yeah.
I love where we're ending off here on these like up vibes, and everybody's just like, hell yeah, Down, down, down. State isn't going down.
To all the viewers, thank you so much for your support. Please you can go to freedomundernaturallaw.com. You can get to all the presenters' websites and links. Go there, check them out, support them. And tomorrow, day 2, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be another full day of fantastic knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been
Right
great
on.
talk.
Great work
Much
today, Will.
love.
Thanks so much, Mr.
Yeah,
DJ,
thank you, Will.
producer.
I appreciate you guys.
My pleasure. I
Driving
appreciate
this
you all.
boat.
Thanks
All
for
right.
making it, everybody,
Thank
for
you.
the chat
Thank you.
roundtable.
You,
Okay.
Will,
Peace
and
Leslie,
love.
all you guys that collaborated
Yeah.
this. Great job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great job, Will and team. Great job, man. A lot of love and respect
tomorrow.
for y'all. Peace and
Thank
love.
you
See
all.
you tomorrow.
Much love and respect. You guys have a good night. See you tomorrow.
Peace.
If you are intelligent, then you know that freedom is inherent because it's evident. It doesn't come from government. It don't come from the president. It comes from the creator of all universal elements. Some people say it's God-given. Others say it's heaven-sent. No matter what you call it, natural law sets the precedent. Subjective morality's a fallacy. There's laws that we cannot see, like gravity, that people accept happily, but tragically they believe that freedom has to be granted to them magically by royalty or majesty. It's sad to see people willingly give up their liberty because they don't really see the enemy that's on a killing spree. The state, it hates sovereign individuals because those who follow natural law and abide by all its principles are mentally invincible, immune to the brainwash. We liberate ourselves and then help others break the chains off. We ain't soft, we go hard like when the thunder hits. Guns and clips ready in self-defense from the government and the elitists running it. Blast them all, claim our freedom standing under it. Natural law, the elitists running it. Blast them all, claim our freedom standing under it. Natural law, freedom under natural law. For us all, yeah, freedom under natural law. For us all, yeah, freedom under natural law. For us all, what? For us all, what? Freedom for us all, what? You know what we do. Get big on FUNL.